Okay. Hello, John.
Hello, Ruth.
Thanks so much for stopping over in London and talking to me.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for asking me. And it's very convenient that I'm staying 5 minutes walk from this place where you teach.
Yeah. So how did it all start for you? How did you hear about it first?
Well, you have to picture, around 1961, 62, I'm a teenager, age 16 or 17, and I'm living on this little island called the Isle of Man, where I was born and brought up. This is a little island, literally halfway between the north of England and the north of Ireland, dead slap bang in the middle. At that time, the island had a population of about 65,000. It's gone up to about 85,000 now. 1960, 61, 62, there is no internet. So there I am. I've gotten hooked on reading novels by Aldous Huxley. So I'm in and out of the Douglas, which is the main town public library, borrowing Aldous Huxley's novels. And I find they have one other book in that library by Aldous Huxley. And it's a thing called Ends and Means. Yeah. And it's something he wrote. I now, years later, understood the title itself is a reference to Alexander and the influence that the technique had on Aldous Huxley. At the time, I had no clue about that. But I took this book out of the library. And it's not a novel, it's a kind of philosophical book, basically. It's Huxley's synthesizing his philosophical, spiritual ideas and outlook on life. And it has 2/3 of a page about something called the Alexander technique. And this jumped out at me because many people since have quoted on their publicity brochures and flyers what Huxley wrote about the technique. And it just stayed in my mouth. Wow, that sounds fascinating. I'd like to get into that. Then I found the publication date of Ends and Means was 1937. There was nothing else in the library on the subject. I asked, nobody I spoke to had ever heard of the Alexander technique. With no such thing as the internet, we got information from radio, TV, newspapers, magazines, no sign of the Alexander technique. So I basically concluded it was some amazing thing they did in the 1920s and 30s. That's long gone. And kind of it dropped out of my mind. So fast forward, 71, that kind of time, 69, I'm in London. And I'd also gotten into being interested in Eastern ideas. And that was stimulated by a novel I read as a teenager, E.M. Forster's Passage to India. It was a school set text for the English literature exams. But again, I was intrigued by what it said about Hindu philosophy. So I was in London around 1970 or so, and I was dabbling in yoga, doing some Tai Chi, some meditation, first of a mantra type and then Buddhist, what is now called mindfulness. It was known as Vipassana or insight meditation. And I was also exploring more Western practices, which you could say lay in this field of mind-body connection. Mind-body interrelationship. Doing yoga and meditation made me acutely aware that the extreme state of physical tension I experienced when practicing yoga and Tai Chi might have something to do with the considerable state of mental and emotional tension I experienced when I was meditating, dawning on me. Maybe these things had something to do with each other, which was, people didn't talk much about those things at that time. So I was going to this place where they did stuff like bioenergetics, Gestalt therapy groups, encounter groups, And on the notice board, I saw this little, I think it was handwritten even. It said, Alexander Technique, lecture demo Friday night, 7:30. And I thought, it's alive. It exists. So, of course, there I was on the Friday evening at 7:30. And it was a terrible lecture demo. I mean, the person who gave it is not with us anymore. Lovely person. And I later I laughed about it. It was the first time she'd ever done this.
Yeah.
But I was intrigued.
Even though it wasn't really...
I'm sure many people have this about them. Something about it.
Yeah.
You just think, I got to try this.
Yeah. As it's so hard to describe.
Yeah. So I got a list of teachers from her with addresses. Mm-hmm. And I discovered I was at that point living in a rented flat. I must have been 10 to 15 minutes walk from where the Carringtons' place was. Mm. They were at 18 Lansdowne Road. Yeah. I was renting a flat on Kensington Park Road. So it was obvious, on the list of teachers, where was I going to go? Well, wow. Just up the road.
Of course.
So I had a demo from Walter Carrington. And I remember somebody said to me after, what was that like? And I remember saying, well, he's a lovely old chap, but I'm not sure what it was about. But still, again, yeah. I thought, I'm going to do this.
Yeah. So something interested you.
Something, and I don't know what it was.
You don't know. Mm.
I can't look back and say it was this or that. Part of it may have been desperation. I'd been doing all these other things, yeah. And I wasn't feeling much benefit from them. Mm. Somewhere around that time, the book that was originally called Resurrection of the Body came out, a very kind of pretentious title. Mm. Ed Maisel from the US. I don't know if you know this book.
No.
At that time, you see, all of Alexander's 4 books had been long out of print. Mm. There was a dispute about copyright and the books were not in print. So you couldn't get them unless you found them in a library. Yeah, it was all well, we won't go into that. It was Beaumont Alexander holding on to them. But Ed put together extracts from the books, and with a long introduction. I bought that from a kind of alternative bookshop called Compendium on Chalk Farm Road. If you were around in those days in London, there were 2 bookshops we all went to, Compendium at Chalk Farm and Watkins in Cecil Court, which still exists, though Compendium doesn't. Anyway, that also intrigued me. I thought, this sounds like what I need, basically. So I had lessons from assistant teachers at the Carringtons. And again, I didn't really, for quite a while, I didn't feel any benefit. But I remember saying to the teacher, I'm just going to keep doing this for 1 year at least. I'm going to give it a good go. And a couple of lessons after that, I actually began to really feel, wow, something is happening here.
Yeah, that's quite a commitment.
I guess it was, yeah. Yes, I think it might have been desperation. Who knows? Yeah. Mm.
So, what was the first aha moment?
It was very obvious. I walked from Lansdowne Road back towards Notting Hill Gate. I think I must have been walking back to Kensington. Was I getting on? I can't remember. Anyway, I was walking along what I think is called Holland Park Avenue towards Notting Hill Gate. And I had this feeling as if something inside of me was lifting me up. Mm. And I can still remember thinking, oh my God, this is what they call going up. Because up till that point, I would have, if you'd asked me about the vocabulary these Alexander teachers were using, I would have said, oh, they just had their own job. They have all these phrases like going up and primary control and non-doing and directing. It's all jargon. And the jargon had suddenly become real. It was a remarkable, I mean, sounds like a silly joke. It was an uplifting experience. And, you know, the physicality of language, as we know as Alexander teaches, there's something significant about the physicality of language. Why do languages have phrases like uplifting? Because that's how I felt.
Yeah, but it needs the penny drop moment
Yes.
to really
Yes.
understand what it means.
And this was reinforced an hour or two later. I can't remember where I was at that point, at home, but an hour or two later, there was the opposite experience of something was dragging me down.
Yeah.
Ding. This is what they call pulling down. So I had both a positive and a negative aha or light bulb moment, and I was hooked really from then on.
So
and
you continued having lessons?
I continued having weekly lessons. I was working in the computer business in the days of big mainframe computers. This was long before PCs and Macs and things like that. I was a really bad programmer. And luckily, I mean, my programs used to fail because of silly mistakes. I was able to sidetrack into being a technical writer and writing the manuals for the operating systems. And, you know, I didn't see myself spending the rest of my life doing that. So when the opportunity came, I was offered the chance of a place on the Carringtons training course. I jumped at it. So early 1973, I joined the training course.
So you decided to train because you weren't really very much interested in your job, and
well, actually, now you mention that, it reminds me that actually I can say for sure when I began training, I didn't really think I was going to be an Alexander teacher.
Like most people.
I just thought this is going to be really good for me.
Yeah.
I think it might have been during my second year of training that I began to think, you know, I could actually do this. I could quite enjoy it. So no, the original motivation was purely selfish. You know, this will be good for me.
Yeah.
And the negative one of I'm not enjoying what I'm doing anyway. 3 years is, you know, way ahead down the road. I'll worry about what to do near the end of the 3 years.
Yeah. So what were your experiences during the training? How did it all progress?
Well, I think my experience of training, I think, was heavily colored by, just before I began the training, having a considerable shock in my personal life, the ending of a relationship unexpectedly. So I was in a very upset state. And for me, the first year of the training was actually quite wonderful in helping me deal with this.
Yeah.
So that whereas I know people quite understandably sometimes will find that the first year or two of the training, they go through a lot of emotional turmoil.
Yeah.
I was in a lot of emotional turmoil. And I remember saying to a friend, you know, these 3 hours in the middle of the day, it's a little ocean of peace and calm and settling me down and so on. So for me, it was a very enormously helpful process in dealing with a considerably difficult period of my life. So I'd say that I'm sure colored my experience of the training. During, would it be the second year? Yeah, actually already I made, you know, you make close friends on a training, and it opened my eyes to so many things. I mean, I was already into some of the Eastern stuff, Buddhist and Hindu and so on, Taoist. I'd been doing these humanistic psychotherapy type things, but there were several of us. We'd go down to Brockwood Park and listen to Krishnamurti's talks. we got really into psychic stuff.
It's what the 70s after all.
We didn't have much money. We used to go, there's a wonderful place, I think it still exists in South Kensington, called the College of Psychic Studies. I believe it was partly funded by the author of the Sherlock Holmes books, Arthur Conan Doyle.
Oh, really?
He was into all that kind of thing. And because we didn't have much money, we just used to pay for group sessions with various mediums and psych, because that was cheap. And we were experimenting with wafting our hands over each other, feeling energy flows and chakras and so on. So it was exciting, you know. It made me open to all sorts of other possibilities.
Interesting.
But when I come back to that now, I now find, maybe it's just a sign of age, but I find myself saying what Walter once said to me about it. He was over in the corner giving somebody a turn, watching some of us doing all this kind of stuff.
In school?
And no, it was, for some reason, we were gathered on a Sunday. I can't remember why we were there, to be honest, but there was some kind of gathering going on. And he was looking across with a kind of benign smile on his face. And I remember saying, "What do you think, Walt? What do you think about this?" "Well, John, you know, it's all very interesting. But I do think our basic work is probably more reliable." And I find myself saying the same thing now. You know, I think it's all a bit of a dead end, quite honestly. And that good basic Alexander work is more helpful for more people and more reliable. Also, the whole chakra healing thing can, for some people, be attractive because it's a way of avoiding dealing with your personal emotional issues. You know, heal my heart chakra, then I won't have to deal with the pain and the sorrow and the difficulties and so on. So it's a bit of there is that problem with it as well, I think. Yeah.
But as you said, sensing all the energies, did that have any influence on the use of your hands in a way?
That's very hard to say. I began as a very manipulative Alexander teacher. Somebody referred to me as an Alexander Rolfer, which I don't think was a very complimentary statement. And I did work over many years to do less and to get more and more undoing in myself, including, you know, right through my arms and shoulders and so on when working on people, and my legs. And I did become much more aware of subtleties that I suppose you could say, you could describe as almost, I love now the expression, feels as if, because you could say, well, I feel things in the person I have my hands on that feel as if there were a kind of energy flow. So we don't have to be bothered to consider, is there such thing as subtle energy? Does chi exist? Does etheric energy exist? Does prana exist? Feels as if bypasses all of that.
Yeah.
We're making, I believe these are called phenomenological observations. You know, you're observing a phenomenon and describing it.
Yeah.
So I find that very helpful, really. So I guess it must have fed in indirectly in that way. But boy, it took a lot of years of undoing.
So, and that happened or started in the training, or were you trained to kind of be a bit more?
No, not at all. I was just a very bad trainee. I mean, Walter and Dylis were always talking about, you put your hands on, and you inhibit and you direct yourself in order to undo yourself.
Mm.
Years later, when I was planning to actually become a training director, I had some enormously helpful conversations with Walter about this.
Wow.
One of the most helpful was him saying, look, I teach people to put their hands on while inhibiting and above all directing themselves. You've got to get this openness in yourself, which is like a positive aspiration to lengthen and widen and open up in order to connect to the student, in order to feel what's happening in the student. And then Walter would say, and then you'll begin to find your hands know what to do. Now that last bit was not awfully helpful. But we'll maybe get on to, I feel in later years I've felt able to teach trainees a bit more than that.
Yeah.
But no, I was not a good representative of the Walter and Dylis training when I began teaching. I mean, I've written about this once, that the experience with a much more experienced teacher helping me put hands on people and getting me to undo my arms, undo your arms more, release your arms more, undo your arms more. You're doing too much, John, you're doing too much. To a point where I remember saying to her, she was called Christine Ackers, known as Cree. I remember saying, Cree, I feel like my hands and arms are completely useless. And she just said, that's when you're just about ready to do some useful work. And that was a big learning experience, really. And so, no, it took me a long time to become a reasonably okay representative of the non-doing Carrington tradition, I would say. Don't judge me by what I was like don't judge them by what I was like in 1976. But luckily, they thought well enough of me to invite me to stay on and be an assistant. So
right away.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
God knows why. I mean, God knows. Well,
can't have been that bad.
Years later, Dylis Carrington actually said to me, and we got on very well at that time, Dylis and I, she said, John, when you first started, Walter and I, we didn't think you were very promising material. And by then, I didn't mind her saying that at all. But they must have seen something. I don't know what. But so I got the offer in my third year of training to just stay on, and of course, I jumped at it.
While you trained.
Yes.
You got the offer to be an assistant.
Yes. I was making plans to leave London and move up to Manchester, where some of my family were from, and I had friends. And then Dylis said, we'd like you to stay on. The only assistant teacher at that time was a woman who passed away not long ago, a lovely woman called Mary Holland. And I think Dylis said, we do like to have a male assistant teacher as well. So maybe I was the only available male. Who knows? I was really, really fortunate. Fantastic. So 11 years of an apprenticeship in a training course. And, we were giving 7 or 8 private lessons every day around the training.
Wow.
I mean, I was giving 35 or 40 lessons a day. Oh, sorry, not a day, a week.
A day.
And 2.5 to 3 hours teaching on the training course. So you build up a very rich level of experience very quickly that way,
Yeah.
That's, giving 35 or 40 lessons a week for a few years, you really get a feel for it, like a craftsman.
That's
in a way that giving 3 lessons a week for 20 years isn't really going to do it, I don't think. Yeah.
It's quite a demand, isn't it?
Well, I was very tired at the end of the day.
I can imagine. Okay.
But you could earn a living, you see that, you could earn a decent living, which is very hard for people now.
Yes.
It was a very fortunate time to be in London and become an Alexander teacher.
And at that time, did they already have 2 groups at the Carringtons?
No, I was part of how that started. The training then was from 11:30 to 3:30, with an hour off in the middle for lunch, because those were the hours that FM operated.
Okay.
And I can't remember, it's a long time ago. I had conversations with several people from the early days about why those hours. One version I heard was that was the time of day when FM was the least busy in his private practice. So it interfered as little as possible.
So wiggling around lunchtime.
Yes.
Ah.
At first, from 9 to 11, say, he'd have people, and then from 3 onwards. That was one version. Another version I heard was they didn't want people having full-time jobs, so you pitch it in the middle of the day, so they can't do a full-time job.
Not even a half.
Not even a half-time job. But I can't vouch for the accuracy of these. These were just versions I heard from different people in the early days.
Well, that would have been my next question, because then it's very hard to work, unless you work in a bar or something.
Well, if you look at the histories of the people training with FM in the 1930s, they had means.
They didn't need to work.
These were not struggling people. They all had some sort of means. I remember Walter saying, and he was, many of them came from better off families than he did, but he said his parents had said, look, we can either pay for you to do the training with FM, or we can pay for you to go through university, but we can't pay for both.
Yeah.
But there was enough money for one of those things. It's hopelessly unrealistic now, honestly. I remember getting up at a Congress years back and making a speech about, there was a big meeting about should we allow more flexible hours for training, and I got up and I'm very in favor of more flexibility. It's the modern world. I remember one of the things I said, I was living then in New York, and I said, if you sit on a New York subway train during the summer months, as you get into July, you begin to see above the windows in the carriages all these advertisements for further education, training in whatever, accountancy, economics, business studies, law, whatever. Different colleges, different training institutions trying to attract students. And commonly, somewhere on the advertisement, it would say something like, flexible hours to suit your busy lifestyle. And that's the 21st century.
Oh, yes.
So, I think we have to be much more adaptable. I'm not keen on everything going online. I think I'm a huge fan and supporter of hands-on work. I think it's essential to experience the depth, the potentiality of the technique. But we could be much more flexible about how we organize training and so on.
Yeah, and that's of course a big discussion at the moment.
Yeah. So I'm on the more let's be more flexible side. The double shift program there started. Myself and 3 friends, Don Burton, Robin Simmons, Gene Clark. We were experimenting with all sorts of things: introductory group classes, week-long holiday courses, just different ways of bringing people into the technique, evening groups. And we got the idea there were people we were giving lessons to who really wanted a 1-year intensive Alexander course, not to become teachers, just can I get in the kind of thing you guys get on the training, but just for a year. So we took 12 people. And we paid to rent the space from 9:30 and built it around the Carringtons program. but it only overlapped for the talks in the middle of the day.
Oh, okay.
Well, you get halfway through this 1 year, 11 of the 12 people are desperate to go on and do the whole training. Please, please. So I spoke to Walter. I was the only one of the 4 of us who was actually working full time there. So I was the kind of liaison guy. And I remember Walter and Dylis said, well, we'll come in one morning and see how they're getting on. And luckily they were happy with how they were getting on, and that transmogrified into that.
Oh, really?
That's how it all began.
That's interesting.
Yeah. 12 people who said, we don't want to train as teachers.
Okay,
11
so
of whom became teachers.
Okay. So it wasn't an official training course?
Oh, no.
It was
no.
Just a year-long
intensive
intensive
It was a year-long intensive program.
Which is a good thing, I think, because many people would invest in 1 year but can't think of 3 years.
Well, I know some training courses now that offer, you can come and do a term. You can
yes, of course.
So that kind of is around now these days. Yeah. But that's how that began. Yeah.
And out of that, the two groups
developed. Yeah. Yeah. So then eventually I moved, I was being encouraged to actually run a training course by the time I'd been there for 10 or 11 years. And that ended up being in Australia.
Which is not the obvious thing to do.
But I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it.
So how did it happen?
Just a letter from people saying, we have a training in Sydney, we want to have one in Melbourne. We don't have teachers in Australia who have the experience. Would you and your then wife, Carolyn, come and do it? And we said yes. And then back to the UK, training in Brighton, then New York. And
wow, so you had three
I've
courses
had training courses on
continents.
3 continents. Yes, yes.
So, and the Australian thing was just for 3 years?
That was just for 3 years. We took 24 people. I mean, that shows you what the demand was like in those days,
Unbelievable.
And we graduated 22, dropped out for various reasons along the way. But it was a wonderful experience, and I love Australia, and I love Melbourne. And I go back every year to experience the Southern Hemisphere summer when it's midwinter here. And my brother and his family live there, so I've got good family connections.
So the two of you did a training course for 24 people?
Yes.
So no
we had
assistants?
We had a terrific team of assistant teachers.
Yeah.
Oh, no, you can't,
I was wondering, how would you possibly do that?
No. Wherever I've been with large training courses, we've always had assistant teachers.
So there were enough teachers in Australia by the time?
Yes, there were several teachers who'd been living in Sydney who actually wanted to move to Melbourne.
Yeah.
So it was a great opportunity for them to actually make that move to a city where they decided they would prefer to live and have a working environment. So, it suited all of us somehow. Things just all fitted together like that.
And after these 3 years, the school closed, or you gave it to other people?
No, it closed. We specifically didn't want, we just wanted a closed cycle. It was set up because we didn't know whether we would want to stay there at the end of it or return to the UK. So it was set up so we could return without leaving any loose ends.
Okay.
Subsequently, various people set up new training courses there.
Okay.
But there was no continuation of what we actually did.
And then you came back
Came back and ran a training in Brighton, eventually went to New York, ran a training there for some years, ended up in the situation I'm in now, which ended up by accident. I had plans to come back to the UK, and at the last moment, those plans went wrong. And I'd sold up in New York, closed the training, burned my bridges, so to speak. And oh my God, what am I going to do? And my older sister, my two sisters have been like my two best friends for most of my life. And we've been very close. I always turn to them when I need some advice. And they said, come back to the Isle of Man, live in the guest space in the upper part of our house while you figure out what to do. And at that point, I began to get these offers to, would you like to come here and teach for a week? Would you like to go there and teach for a week? We'd love you to come over here and teach for a couple of weeks. And I started doing that. And then I began to think, I mean, you know, I'm 80 years old now. So at that point I was 70, 71. And I thought, oh, I could make a life like this. So I bought a flat in Ramsey in the Isle of Man. I don't teach on the Isle of Man except when people come to visit me. I don't want a local clientele. It's my retirement base. But from that base, I go to all over the world for anything from 4 days to 6 weeks in the case of Australia.
It's actually a great concept.
Yeah, a couple of times to London, a couple of times to New York.
Yeah.
And in between, that's my retirement. Some people of my age, some Alexander teachers, simply work less per day and per week. What seems to suit my metabolism is to do intensive work for periods of 1 to 6 weeks and then don't do anything.
Lie on the couch.
Except some writing. You know, I've been doing a lot of writing, of course.
Yeah, so you also wrote quite a bit. Maybe you can talk a little bit about
2 volumes published by Moritz, Manual of Alexander Technique Teacher Training, Volume 1, Volume 2. Go and buy it. Tells you everything you need to know about teacher training.
Okay, that's the whole summary of your experience.
That is the entire summary of my experience of how to train teachers.
Yeah.
Building on what I learned from the Carringtons, adding what I felt was missing in those days to bring it more into the needs of the 21st century. Much more help for people making the transition from being a third-year student to becoming a fully fledged teacher. Much more help was needed. And much more structure. You see, what Walter did, and I say this because, again, I had these wonderful opportunities to have long talks with him about this. He ended up running FM's training course in 1954 and 55. He said he was assisting FM, and FM said to him, I'd like you, and Walter was going to different parts of England to teach as well. And he said, FM said one day, I'd like you to stop going to these other places and stay here because I want you to do the day-to-day running of the training. If you read the Goddard Binkley diary, you can see this very clearly. You know, Goddard's training in 1954 and 55, Walter's running the training. FM's hardly there. You know, it's obvious. Okay. You know, read the Goddard, The Expanding Self. It's all in there. But Walter said then, he said, it didn't feel like a responsibility because FM was there.
Yeah.
He could always ask him everything. But he said when FM died, suddenly there was this burden of, oh my God, it's me. And he began to think more about the training. He added structure first by doing readings from FM's books every day and adding talks on other aspects of the technique. They used to only let people put hands on each other in the 3rd year.
Oh.
And Walter could see how that was fraught with anxiety and stress. And, you know, some people were told earlier, you're okay to start, and, you know, you're not.
Oh dear.
So Walter began what we call the hands-on groups, very structured from the very beginning, groups of 3 with a supervised teacher for 30 minutes, beginning to introduce aspects of how to develop hands-on skills.
And putting hands on each other then?
Putting hands on each other under very close supervision.
Yeah.
He also added what he called games, which was a term I've never liked. It was a bit of a silly joke, you know. Oh, it's just a game, we don't take it serious. Many of us subsequently used the term directed activities.
Yeah.
These are little practices to illustrate different aspects of the principles of the technique. They might be based around standard procedures like hands on back of chair and monkey and so on. But you know, they can develop on from there. And I found I needed to develop those much more extensively into, again, more structured sequences to illustrate learning points about aspects of it. Similarly, the hands-on groups I felt needed to be developed more throughout the first 2 years of training. So that's all in the Moritz 2 volumes.
So your 3 training courses were quite structured in how it all happened?
Yeah, exactly as I'm describing.
Yeah.
This all arose already in Melbourne. The first time I had a training course, already this planned, and you know, I had this kind of idea. It just got refined. You know, I used to keep notes on everything, and you figure out what you think. Oh, that didn't work very well. Let's try doing it this way. So over decades, really, there were notes, which Regina and Shannon Moritz, years later, I showed them these notes, and it was actually Regina, I think, who said we could help you make a book out of this. So I'm very grateful for their help. I couldn't have done it without their help. Yeah.
So your first training course, you said the 24 people all went through the training together?
Yes.
From day one to
yes.
graduation?
Which is brilliant, because in the final year you focus entirely on issues of becoming a teacher.
Yeah.
What it misses is the informal learning that goes on when you've got first, second, and third years mixed up together.
Yeah.
So on balance, I think that informal learning shades the balance. You know, I think it's probably better that way. But it's a close call. You learn from those above you, and as you go on to become those people, you learn by practicing and talking to those behind you and so on. Yeah.
But you changed that in the second and third training course.
Well, partly you come back to England, you discover there's all these training courses. And people come and say, oh, I'd love to train with you. And you say, well, we've just started a 3-year group. You'll have to wait 2 3/4 years. Well, I'd love to train with you, John, but, you know, I have other options. It wasn't practical. You know, you couldn't have people waiting that long. So that faded away. Yeah. But I'd still recommend it in the right environment if somebody wanted to try it that way.
I would like to ask you for some brief definitions. How do you explain what is the Alexander technique to people who have never heard of it?
The elevator pitch.
The elevator pitch.
Yeah. Well, mine is a bit of an awkward one. But you see, I don't like saying simple things like it's about changing habits. It's about becoming more conscious of your patterns of thinking and moving, things like that. Because, I mean, I watched a colleague way back in Melbourne give a 40-minute presentation about the technique, entirely about how it's about changing habits.
Oh, wow.
At the end of which you could see that everybody thought it was some sort of psychotherapy. And when we offered to put hands on them, they thought, what? What's that? So, you know, I mean, what I tend to say, and I know it's not snappy really, but the technique is about coordinating the 3 main functions of your muscles, which are postural support, breathing, and movement. Your muscles have to support you against gravity. move you around the world, and help you to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in most people, these three functions heavily interfere with each other.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people have postural support patterns of either not supporting themselves or rigidifying themselves, breathing patterns of messing up the whole support system, movement patterns of messing up the support system and the breathing. So we're going to come in and help you to synergize those three things with verbal instruction to get you more conscious of what's happening, and hands-on helping it to happen at the neuromuscular level for you. Now, I know it's not very snappy.
Well, it's very precise for the physical side of things.
Yes, yes.
But you
the
don't
other
include
side
the psychophysical.
Well, you see, to me, the psychophysical is very important. But I don't think it's where you should start with people because of this potential misunderstanding that all this muscular breathing stuff is trivial, and what really matters is what... See, I came to this from yoga, Tai Chi, bioenergetics. I was very aware that you can practice meditation and be in therapy groups, and it doesn't give you anything like what the Alexander technique gives you.
Yeah.
So I don't want to mislead people on that score. If you start at the neuromuscular level, postural support, breathing and movement, pretty quickly people will catch on that this actually has something to do with what's going on up here. And if they're interested in that kind of thing, it becomes clearer, and you can talk about the connections with mindfulness, etc., which I think is enormously important. But if you just want to get rid of back pain or play the violin better, you maybe are not going to think it's as important as I might think it is.
No, but if you're a stressed person in the 21st century, reactions and reactive patterns might be quite understandable as they experience them.
Yes, that's absolutely true. Let's step back a bit, Ruth. We're talking about what do you first say when somebody says, you're asking me to give an entire explanation covering all aspects of the technique. And that, you know, that's what beginner teachers often do. You know, in the first lesson, they teach everything they know about the technique. I think we should go step by step. Of course, I'm going to pay attention to where this person's coming from.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if a psychotherapist comes to me for lessons, and I've had quite a few, obviously I'm going to talk in their language.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, let's look at things like primary control, inhibition, and direction.
Exactly. That's the next. Maybe we go through the principles.
Oh, just before, yoga and Tai Chi and meditation. I sometimes have said the Alexander technique is a method in search of a philosophy, because you see, yoga it comes with a framework, Vedanta. There it all is. You know, you've got the Upanishads and the Vedas and all the great teachers and gurus. Tai Chi, you've got the Tao Te Ching and Chung Tzu, have I got that right? Anyway, the various other great texts from that tradition. And what do we have? The stutterer and the golfer.
And 4 unreadable books.
You said it. But I agree. Because you see, the Western world, once the rise of science and the demise of Christianity as the major religion of the West and so on, we are in a fragmented society in the Western world.
Yeah.
So people will come to the technique for so many different purposes. Yeah, and so they have to figure that out for themselves. Yeah. What am I going to use it for? Yeah. What is my goal in life? Because it isn't part of a complete philosophical framework, like the Eastern teachings are.
So,
primary control.
Primary control.
I find the easiest way to explain this is to say, look, you come to me, maybe feeling a lot of discomfort, a combination of bodily discomforts, emotional discomforts, sense of being, as you said yourself, about some people become very reactive. One of the great discoveries Alexander made is that at the simple neuromuscular level, we don't have to analyze your unique pattern. You may be unique, you are unique, we're all unique, but we're all the same. We have a spine, a head, a thorax, four limbs, etc., etc. The number of ways in which you can screw up that bodily system are really quite limited. And the great discovery Alexander made is that if you look at how the neck muscles support and balance the weight of the head, that considerable, whatever it is, 4 kilos, 5 kilos on top of here. If you look at how the neck muscles support the head, and you look at how the back muscles support the trunk, because more of the trunk is in front of the spine than behind it. If you get an improvement in that organization of neck supporting head and back supporting torso, you will find amazingly that everything else improves. That has a knock-on effect. That seems to be like a fast-track way in to harmonizing the whole muscular system.
Yeah.
So that's your primary control, basically. And I think it's worth pointing out, look at the development of a baby. Newborn baby has no extensor muscle tone to speak of. It cannot support any part of itself. So when you hold the newborn baby, you've got to support its trunk and its head. Yeah. A few months later, there's the baby, head up, looking around excitedly. Neck muscles supporting, balancing, coordinating the weight of the skull. Put that baby on the ground initially, it doesn't go anywhere. It just stays there. And there comes a point when the baby begins to be able to sit on the floor, initially with its hands supporting its torso. So its neck and head are organized, but it hasn't got the extensor tone in the back to support the trunk. The next milestone is sitting on the floor, head looking around, arms free to play with things. Yeah. Neck, head, back. Yeah. I think that's pretty significant.
Yeah.
Inhibition. I think Alexander teachers use the term inhibition in 3 overlapping ways. There's the basic stop and say no, which is a way of not rushing into things. It's a way of not doing the first thing that occurs to you, because the first thing that occurs to you will be your habitual reactive pattern. Yeah. If you want to begin to change that, the first thing to do is give yourself a gap, give yourself a pause, give yourself time to consider, is this really what I want to do? So you could call that inhibition number 1. Inhibition number 2 is where inhibition is simply the reverse side of direction. If I'm going to free my neck to let my head go forward and up and my back lengthen and widen, you could say, well, I'm going to not stiffen my neck and to not pull my head back and to not shorten and narrow my back. Yeah. They're 2 sides of the same coin. So often when people talk about inhibition, they may actually be talking about direction, but just in the reverse or negative sense.
Negative directions.
Negative directions. Yeah. There's something that I jokingly call inhibition 0 as opposed to inhibition number 3, because I think inhibition 0 ideally would precede 1 and 2. And inhibition 0 is quietening down, basically. Anyone who knew Margret Goldie would know how much she would emphasize. She would say to me, choose to be quiet throughout your whole body.
Yeah.
Another version was choose to be quiet throughout your whole body with particular attention to your neck and head. Walter had a way of speaking about this that I liked very much, because I'd been involved in meditation practice. You know, when you practice any kind of meditation, or really any kind of self-awareness, you will become very aware of the voices in your head. I mean, I wake up first thing in the morning and I think, oh my God, it's already started. I'm just struck by how instantly it starts up first thing in the morning. Anyway, so one of the things that really struck me from Walter was him saying, we don't want inhibition and direction becoming 2 more voices adding to the ones already in your head.
Yeah.
We want them to be part of what helps all of that to actually quieten down.
Yeah.
So I find that there are times when consciously undoing through the neck, head, back, ribs, face, jaw, tongue, all of this apparatus will help the thoughts to quieten down. There are other times when it doesn't work. and it almost seems to, I need to step back internally at a kind of, dare we say, mental level before I can even undo anything in my neck and jaw and something. It's such a reciprocal relationship that sometimes it works. You can improve it from one end and sometimes you have to go from the other end. So that's inhibition.
But if you arrived at the state of inhibition 0, do you even need inhibition 1 and 2?
Well, if life were perfect and you were perfect, you probably wouldn't. But it ain't, it's not like that, is it, in real life?
But wasn't that what happened to Alexander in the end, that he at least stopped giving directions, or the verbal directions? But that's the next topic already.
Who on earth told you that?
I think it comes from Carrington.
Okay, let's tackle that. 1946.
Exactly, yeah.
So Walter writes in his diary in 1946 that FM called the assistant teachers in, and he said to them, we've got to change the way we're talking about directions. We're not being consistent. And I've forgotten the exact wording now, but it's something like everything needs to be expressed in the negative or inhibitory way. We don't want to be telling people to release the neck and send the head forward and up. We've got to be talking about stop stiffening the neck, stop pulling the head back, stop shortening and narrowing the back. 1946. Let's first tackle the thing about verbal directions. Now, Pat Macdonald, I think, said this very well in that little book called The Alexander Technique as I See It. We communicate with our hands and with language. Mm-hmm. So you're teaching somebody, you're using words. So how do you begin to teach them about directions without using words? So you use words. And we all learned some verbal form that encapsulates the directions. Let the neck release, to let the head go forward and up, to let the back lengthen and widen, possibly adding knees and arms or shoulders. We have to begin with words. Mm-hmm. What Macdonald said was that the hands-on lessons, I think he said it gives experiential meaning or experiential content to those words. Now, Walter Carrington's explanation, he had many explanations, which I like. He was very good at explaining things. And he was adamant that you're not supposed to go around subvocally mumbling the words to yourself. It is not about verbal directions.
Yeah.
You're not going around saying, neck to be free, head to go forward and up, back to lengthen and widen. Those are the pointers, but very soon they drop away and you have a certain kind of bringing attention to your neck, head and back in a way that you are both encouraging release of constrictions through there. And because we live in a planet with gravity, if you just encourage release of the restrictions, everything will tend to collapse. Yeah. It'll go that way. So fundamental to the Alexander technique is release with direction. Because otherwise you get released. Yeah. That 1946 thing, you then have to ask, so how come all those first generation teachers we used to know, they all taught directions in the form of let the neck release, they had to go forward and the back. They didn't go around saying, now Ruth, I want you to stop stiffening your neck and stop pulling your head back. Yeah. Nor did they go around saying nothing at all, just being nice to you and giving you a nice experience. They all had this way of expressing directions, as well as inhibition and primary control. Does this mean that FM, that they chose to ignore FM? That they went into that meeting in 1946 and then went out saying to each other, oh, forget that, that'll never work. We'll just ignore the old man. Seems a bit unlikely. And then jump forward. I mean, this is where it becomes most obvious. Read the Goddard Binkley diary. Everybody should read that book. Goddard was a young American coming over to England in 1951 or 52. Detailed accounts. He told, I knew him personally in his later years. Even did some hands-on exchanges with him, which is fascinating. He said, I'd walk out of those lessons. Across the street was a cafe. Sit down, order a pot of tea, get out the notebook, start writing. Oh, okay. So, within less than 5 minutes of the lesson, he was writing. So people who knew FM all apparently said about that book that, because they all read the original typescript that he used to, it wasn't even photo, whatever it was, Gestetnered, those old-fashioned duplicated. There were duplicated copies floating around the London Alexander world. They all said it was an accurate and vivid record of FM teaching. Look at how FM teaches direction to Goddard in the 1950s. The only conclusion I can come to is that the 1946 thing was an experiment that didn't go very well. They all pretty soon, including FM, judging by the Binkley diary, they gave it up. The nearest to it was Margret Goldie, who, as you may know, she was always saying less. She'd move me and she'd say, not the head back, not the body forward. Very, negative expression. But she'd also say to me, head away from knees, head away from knees. That's a positive direction. I'm not sure how you could construe it in any other way. And the others were all much more, it was about, you have to deal with gravity, if you don't have any direction. There's another thing I would like to throw in here at a personal level. I have a great interest these days from that, going back to Aldous Huxley and interest in Eastern stuff, what's called non-dual teaching or Advaita in the Hindu and Buddhist traditions. There is a certain element for me about an upward and outward direction embodies an aspiration, whether you could call it an aspiration at a psychological level, at a spiritual level. It's how do I aspire to be in the world?
Yeah, yeah.
Am I actually content to be this very separated, isolated person? Or do I have some aspiration to something bigger than that, really, and more porous to and part of the world rather than something separate to it?
Yeah.
And I think Alexander Direction is a great help in bringing that in a grounded way into our lives. So, yeah.
Oh. That's a very nice ending.
I think that might be a good way to start with. Yeah.
Thank you so much, John.
It's a pleasure. It's been fun. I've enjoyed it.
Thanks
for having me here.